Welcome to Dynascore's new series, Dynamic Creators, where we discuss creating more professional content with less. I'm Peter Lerman, and today we'll be talking about filmmaking, photography, and composing with our special guest, Joe DiGiovanna. Let's get into it. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to start with your background and how you got started into filmmaking, photography, and creating content.
So when I was 8 years old, I know I was always interested in photography. And when I was 8 years old, I was going off to Boy Scout camp, and my dad gave me his Pentax K1000 film camera and 2 rolls of film. I was like, all right.
That's a movie camera. Or is that a still camera?
That's just a
camera.
Basic 35 millimeter film point and shoot. Well, I shouldn't say point and shoot because it's manual. But that doesn't mean that I knew what I was doing. When you look through the lens, you're adjusting your aperture and your shutter speed, and then there's a little dial telling you if you're right. And so that really started everything. I've been taking pictures my whole life. And as I got into high school, I got really into musical theater. As the story goes, I followed a girl into the drama club. And then the next thing I know, I was building the plant for Little Shop of Horrors, from scratch. And that's at this point, that's probably one of my favorite things I've ever done still. And so all the while I was always taking pictures. Mm-hmm. And, so I go to college for theater, and I get really into lighting design and get really into stage management and scene design, and still finding my way. And when I came out of college, I was on the road as a stage manager with Chita Rivera. And I was taking pictures the whole time, of course. And, at the end of it, I made a little video. We did 17 cities over 6 months across the United States. And so I made this film about being on the road with Chita Rivera when I was 23 years old, and it was called I Was 23. And when I showed the film at the end of the tour, one of my friends was like, "Oh, you got to meet my friend." And, that brought me into the fashion world exclusively for 8 years of just working in fashion. That's where I started to shoot video, which I'd never shot my entire life. So I'm 24 years old shooting video for the first time. And that's kind of it. The funny thing is, I shot fashion only for about 8 years. And then I came out of that world. And then I've been drifting in a wonderful way back to theater and music and live performance, Broadway, and all that sort of thing.
And when you sort of got started sort of making motion pictures from the still pictures, what was that transition like, and how did that sort of change things for you?
Yeah, that was such a funny back and forth. I specifically remember up until I was probably 24, and I could hear myself as a young person saying it to people "Oh, no, I never shoot video. I don't want to be responsible for 24 frames per second." And being a little proud of myself that I knew that little detail, but for real, being really nervous about shooting that much content. So that was a real thing for me. And then there became this switch. Having taken still photographs my entire life, there became this switch where all of a sudden I was shooting motion picture for Vanity Fair. And it's me and Tom Hanks, and I'm just blasted away, and not even the littlest bit nervous. And so all of a sudden I had this incredible experience and all this time shooting video. And this is where it gets funny, because then I was afraid to take still pictures because I've become so comfortable shooting video. It was terrifying to think of switching back.
Right.
And that was because if we're summarizing, let's say it was 8 years of just shooting video and shooting some massive projects that, were just really high stakes. Yep. And then all of a sudden I'm I
feel some of them on film.
Yeah. Motion picture film with Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp. And you've got one roll of film, and if you did it wrong, you did it wrong. And Liam Neeson's not showing up tomorrow. Well, it's not even tomorrow, the film won't be processed for weeks. Right. So it's it's pretty wild. And then, all of a sudden you've got this guy that used to be afraid to shoot video is now afraid to shoot stills. It's I've I've come out of that point. And now that when someone hires me to shoot video, they're going to notice I'm also going to shoot some stills. And when somebody hires me to shoot stills, I'm shooting video as well.
And I think, media and the stories you want to tell are so sort of connected, and it's sort of why we gravitate, I imagine, to certain, modes of communication and content creation. What are the stories that are important for you, and maybe that has some connection with why you sort of gravitated towards, motion pictures and away from stills, or, and now obviously you're using both.
I think so. Yeah. I think like whenever a job comes up, or let's just say a project, because sometimes it's a job for like a big client that pays a lot of money. Sometimes it's like a musician that you really wanted to do a portrait of. Sometimes it's like a friend and you're collaborating with a bunch of people just to do something cool.
Yep.
So like whenever a project comes up, I end up sort of daydreaming and being like, ooh, wait a minute. I just did this piece in Central Park, and, it was this model that I've always wanted to photograph. And it was just like my ideas of what that project could become dictated like how I showed up.
Sure.
Like my skill set, I can't show up with like watercolor and do a really great painting.
Sure.
But I can be like, ooh, let's bring my Polaroid camera that's from 1957, and you get the physical, let's do that. Let's do the pull apart Polaroid, and like we're gonna do, this is a great time to try out that Bolex and the 8mm. So yeah, it's interesting when we talk about all the different media, and then sometimes we're just shooting everything digital, and then later on manipulating to make it look like a certain feeling. So yeah, it's definitely like whatever the project is going to dictate how I show up.
So what is it, looking back on your work, what is there something that is your favorite that you have just a good feeling about having created? Is there something that you love that you've?
Yeah. Well, I'm supposed to be very honest, right? So, yeah, it's funny. I was on a first date like a lot of years ago, and she asked me, so, what's your favorite picture you've ever taken? What is it? And I was totally stumped on the date. I was like totally stumped, because I was thinking, my father had just passed and my grandfather had passed recently before that. And I was thinking like, the first thing I thought of was like, oh, it should be a picture of my father. My favorite picture that I ever took should be a picture. And then I was like, well, I don't know. Oh, maybe it should be a picture that I took on the camera that my father gave me for Boy Scout camp. Like maybe that should be my, you hear the word should showing up in my thought process, right? And it's like, no, it should be a picture of my brother and his kids. It should be a picture of this and that and the other thing. And then I remembered this picture that I'd just taken of my friend's son, like about an hour after he was born. And my friend's daughter was about 4 years old, dressed in a nurse's, and it had her name inscribed. It was like a cute thing for when your baby brother comes into the world. And she was holding him on the chair, and it was the two of them. And I just thought, every single picture that I've ever taken is in that picture. My dad's in there, my grandfather's in there, my mom's in there. Everybody, every fashion thing, everything was in that one shot. And I was like, that's it. And at this point, it's been, I think, it's been like 6 years. And I'm still like, no, that's it. That's the shot.
I love that. And I love that what became your favorite was not the original intention at all. It right. Really was it was sort of an after the fact thing where you had created things and then you went back and said, oh, this is the one.
Absolutely. It's so funny, that relationship between the artist that's creating and then the artist that's going to do the editing later.
Yep.
In a lot of cases, it's me both times.
Right.
And sometimes when you're like, I'm sure it's probably like this when you're writing music, like sometimes you might be like, that was it. That was it. That was like a spark of brilliance. Like that idea was great. But like Peter, who comes back a couple weeks later to like take a look at that, might be like, that was not any good.
Sometimes I try to connect with my past self and I think about what mindset was I in when I made this decision, either good or bad. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could capture that that great idea that I knew I had about this, or sometimes it's like, what was I thinking? This is much better now. I can, so what is a common myth about being a content creator and just your professional life?
A myth about us. Well, you know what? I don't know if this is going to answer the question, but I'll just say it. There's just that disconnect between what you're posting and what's really happening, and it's not intentional. It's just, if I shoot a campaign, I can't post it until a certain time. So I start posting all these things, and then somebody, every once in a while, somebody will reach out and be like, oh yeah, I was thinking about you for this job, but I see how busy you are. And I'm like,
yeah, that was a long time ago.
I mean, I am busy. I appreciate you, even saying that, but like, yeah, I shot that in June. Like, so that's interesting, because isn't that a strange relationship? Instagram at first, for me as a photographer, I remember very explicitly thinking when Instagram came out, why would I be putting up work for free?
Right.
Like, what I had just entered photography professionally, and I was like, why would I create work to present for free? I didn't understand or how, like what. So then it became like Instagram was just barrels of fun. It was like, if you were going to dinner and you saw something weird on the ground, you would take a picture and put it up, and like it would be artistic, because like that's how we are. But it wasn't like now. I mean, now I'm afraid to post on Instagram. I've got to like really think it through, and it's amazing to see technology changing so quickly. And like, what is this, and what does it mean for me? I feel like we're all just running forward trying to figure out what are you doing? Are you still posting stories? No, don't never post stories. Always post stories. Only post stories. What's wrong with you? And you're just like, okay.
I hear it's all about reels, so I don't know.
Yeah. And now Instagram, like you update it and it's like, wait, what? That's not, I mean, I'm using Instagram, but we could be talking about any of the places.
And do you miss having like a sort of just a platform, and do you have a secret account that you are just posting some things on that you don't feel as much pressure to release?
I don't. And I think that's just a matter of, like, if I had a bunch of free time, I would probably have a secret account. And like,
if you do, you'll have to
like post silly things for my friends, but like, but I don't. But it's interesting to think, and like, how do you define that? I was just talking to my friend, and like, he's like, I don't know if I'm allowed to post the surf pictures on Instagram, because his career has been going in a certain way. And it's like, you start putting up those surf pictures and it's like, wait, who's this guy? Yeah.
And so speaking of this, what's the most important lesson that you have learned over your career?
Long silence.
Does that mean there are a lot of them, or there are very few of them?
No, I think there's just millions of lessons. Like, if you're not learning something so my career is pretty specific. Visual, I guess. When we're talking about visual, like if you're going to a shoot to shoot video or to shoot stills, and you didn't learn something on that day, you probably did something wrong. Like, I am coming away from every shoot like, well, I'll never do X again. Whether it's, sometimes it's a literal mistake. Sometimes it's like, I didn't realize that this tripod had like a thing and that thing, and you've learned like a physical mistake that you're not going to make again. And then sometimes it's more like, it's more delicate. It's like, wow, if you're photographing a person, it can be so intimate. And you're like, I shouldn't have brought this up at that point. That seemed to kind of turn things in a weird direction. Or you just, sometimes you're in the shower and you're just like, man, I really nailed that one thing. That was like a perfect situation. That was great.
I think, one of the things I always think about is, it's easy to learn the lesson. Is it putting it into action the next time around on the spot? That's always the difficult thing, is taking that lesson and actually improving your workflow, improving your process, and improving your collaborations. That to me is always the tough thing, is to be able to apply all those lessons that you've learned And, as you said, and I love that, there, some of those pragmatic ones really do have big impacts, and you really do need to learn those lessons. But obviously the, intrapersonal, collaboration ones are complex and sometimes hard to sort of, correct the next time around, because all the situations are so different, and I imagine every, shoot and every, is sort of its own thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the other thing I'll add, like, I worked with this director on a project that's not out yet, but we filmed it for years. And he was always interacting with actors, and he was just all about, you need to, first thing that comes into your head, you have to trust the first thing that comes into your head. And I find myself going by that really often.
Yeah.
You're in a situation, if you're photographing a live event, for example, you've got a million different things you can do. I mean, million different things you can do. And if you're shooting like jazz or a big rock concert, whatever it is, like, you've got to just go with it, and you feel like you're with those musicians, and you're just like, something cool is going to come out of the drum kit, and you like get yourself ready, and you're like, you're nailing it.
Just follow those instincts.
Yeah, you got to follow the instincts, and you sort of have to, again, it goes back to, like, it's interesting to go and look at your pictures from like a year ago, because you can, at that point, you're removed from all of the little things that were bugging you. When you're first editing your pictures or your video, as soon as you get home, if you're doing it like the same night or the next day, you might be like, oh, I worked so hard to get that shot. Like, I was standing on one foot and I was leaning over the thing, and the wind was blowing and it was raining, and who cares? Like, you as the emotional human artist that created that piece, you've got all that in your head.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to attach to it and run with it and fight for that picture. And
Right.
sometimes, it's interesting when you work with another editor in a collaboration, because you're sending it off to them to make all those decisions. They don't know that you were standing on one foot in the rain. They don't have any idea. And it's beautiful when you start getting to those processes.
Yeah. Fresh eyes is very, well, it's scary, but sometimes it's also a big breath of fresh air.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so moving from production to post-production.
Yeah.
Since that seems to be where we're headed, what's your favorite productivity hack for editing?
Ooh, productivity?
Favorite hack for editing? What?
You mean like just in general, or?
Yeah. When you're putting stuff together, do you have is there any sort of methodology that you follow, or is there anything that you think that maybe other people don't, that you could share?
Yeah. Are we talking about Dynascore?
No, but bring it up if you want.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about it.
Sorry, I'm just thinking like productivity for editing.
That was not a leading question.
Yeah. I'm stumped, man. How to edit?
Well, then maybe we could talk about Dynascore. What, I know you've used it, but what is your process to scoring music for your videos?
Yeah.
It's always, everybody has a sort of a different way, and everybody has a different workflow, and it's always one of the sort of most, it's sort of it's an idea that people have, and not a lot of, sort of practical tools.
Yeah, for sure. Music is, a lot of the films that I shoot are literal music videos, right? So that's a whole adventure onto itself. And then when I talk about the work that I do in fashion, it's like each piece is like a little poem that needs music. Everything needs music, of course. So then I think about my time-lapse project, and it's like, well, that needs music. Everything needs music. And like, even the advertising that I do as well, it's like, you need music. So it always became a question of like, there are certain films that I work on that are really special to me, and I have time and I can sit at the piano and create some music.
Yep.
We also have to be considerate, like, I'm not a musician that can create every single type of music, you know, like I can't sit down and do a dubstep piece. I really want to, and I'm trying to figure out how. But at the moment, anything I compose is going to be pretty narrow in what it's going to come out as. So when you need music for a piece, like, it always used to be, let's go to the stock websites and see what they got, you know, and they've got it like trimmed down. They've got like their 15-second, their 30-second and everything. And it was always a matter of, like, me as an artist, I was always building the visuals off of the music. This is how my entire career went. Like, and people, I think people really appreciated me as an editor because I've been playing piano since I was 8. So like, it was all musical. You know, I would always be like on a phone call or looking across the room in a conversation, like, we need a musical reason to change to this next shot. And sometimes people would give me really weird looks, but sometimes people were really happy about it, you know. So there becomes like a before and after with this AI music product, Dynascore. It's like, you know, before it, I was always having to go in, and it's amazing what you can get away with, you know, when you start, like, if you have a song that's already been recorded,
Mhm.
you know, even a year ago today, I was doing a piece and we had music from the musician Rye, and we had, you know, I was working with Sonia Taya as the director and choreographer. She's the director and choreographer of this piece for
Tony
American Ballet
Award
Theater.
winner.
What's that?
Tony Award winner.
Tony Award winner. And this piece that we were doing was for American Ballet Theater. And so, like, she was actually collaborating with the musician Rye, Rhye. And we had this person, like, in communication, but we wanted to, like, remove one of the instruments, and that wasn't an option for them. But they were like, you have the, whatever you can do, you're welcome to do, you know. So, you know, I'm like in Premiere, I'm throwing it over to Audition, and I'm like, and you know, fortunately, the thing that we wanted to tweak out was on the center channel, and we pulled it out. And like, it's all that, like, terribly long story is to say, like, you can get away with a lot of stuff. And I got really good at getting into music and adjusting it so that it would fit the amount of time I needed, and then editing the video so that it would fit the music. And
Yeah.
so like, that's how it was. And that's how everything was, and that's how it worked. And when Dynascore came around, I was just blown away excited, because I was like, oh, so if you already have an edit and you have all the constraints of an edit, you know, this one needs to be 60 seconds for this, needs to be 15 seconds for that. No, 15, 14. Yeah, it has to be 14. And you're just like, okay. All right, all right. When you send, you know, there are people on here that know this, there are people that aren't. When you send deliverables for a big project, you might only be sending, let's say, 3 videos. Yeah, okay. No, yeah, but you're sending 27 files because you have it set for China. You know, there's a store in China, and there's a billboard that's this wide, and you've done an edit that'll fit right there. And guess what? The music needs to be 14 seconds. And it's like, oh, okay.
There are cut downs, and then there are cut downs.
Cut downs, and then there are cut downs. Yeah. So like, when you're doing these massive batches and everything, you want to be able to still keep, like, you want it to still be music. Like, you don't want it to just be a 14-second sound that fits in there. You want it to have musicianship. And that's the insane, wonderful thing about Dynascore is, like, musicians, people have written this music. And now it's as if you're in the room with whoever wrote each of these different pieces of music. And as if you had $1 million budget and you could just turn to your composer and be like, I need that a little bit shorter. And the composer's just like, sure, bam. And like 5 seconds later, you have the next version. You know, I've been in those situations where you're like, you got to call the composer who's in LA and you're in New York. And the composer's like, okay, this is great. Like, I dig it. I love the changes. I got to book a quartet, So, man, who do we have that can, and you're just like, you're just like, okay, so what's the timeline looking like? And,
When will that be done?
and that's a beautiful thing. And there's still, I would love to be in that situation also. Like,
Yeah.
every day, because I know quartets and I want to book them. But like, when we're dealing with some of this fast media that has to happen yesterday,
Mhm.
this is amazing. This is truly amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things we always, sort of set out to do is to do something that feels really musical. And I think that's always the sort of hard thing with cut downs and with editing to music, because ultimately you're still editing the music. You're still sort of cutting it down in a way. And then, as you said, then cutting down the video again. So you cut down the music and then you cut the video, and you're sort of doing it twice, but really you're already editing, the music. And, sometimes to, the edge of its life. And, we really try to, help you sort of tell the story. So that's super cool. And, it's always exciting to hear how people are using it. All right. So we're just going to, I'll ask you one more serious question.
I'm still dreaming, by the way, of, Dynascore for live stream.
Yeah. It's something we've talked about, and
you're already like thinking about that, but I'm just bringing it up again.
I just see the potential, and we haven't done it yet, so maybe we'll figure out a way to to premiere this with Dynascore and live stream. So we'll put our heads together.
Yeah, because I think is this gonna work?
Yeah.
Can I share the screen?
Oh yeah.
Hey, I've got this live shot in New York here. Need some music.
Yeah. I love it. And this is on Twitch?
Yeah, this is on Twitch here. Yeah.
But you now have this on your own site, or is this is your own Twitch site that is now live all the time?
I guess both.
Mm-hmm.
This is on Twitch, and it's also on my website. Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
So this is twitch.tv/NYC_timescape.
Yeah.
And what is running in the background?
I should probably close that.
Is that processing for this?
So that's processing.
Is that not supposed to see that? Is that a secret sauce?
That's processing for this. This here is the most excitement I've had in years. This is my website for the time lapse, and this allows a user to just scroll through wildly fast, I might add, to scroll through 10 million images, going all the way back to July 11th of 2015. And then, if they want, they can order a print of a moment that's special to them.
That's amazing. And how many, how often do they occur?
So it's one picture every 30 seconds. And this is just a beta, but we can go into, what month is it? November, today's the 11th. So this is this morning, and it's 12, so we can go here. So here we are, it's 12. We can just check it out.
And so you can order a physical print from this site, directly from the site.
Yeah. So this was always part of my project, but a really challenging logistical thing to pull off.
I was literally going to ask you, my next question was, what is the biggest challenge in doing this project? So take it away. Love to hear about the challenges.
Yeah, so I dreamed up this 30-year time-lapse project probably 7 or 8 years ago. It's been working now for 6.5 years. It took about a year and a half to figure out what camera would work. I tried all sorts of different cameras and failed. And then once I got it working, here we are. But I have it's like 3 phases. Phase 1 was just get started, get on Instagram, post the sunrise and sunset every day and go from there. Phase 2 is the website, which is launching like any minute now. And phase 3 is an exciting secret that I can't talk about yet. but next time, have me back.
Awesome.
But the biggest challenge here was, so these are shot with raw images, right? So it's not shot with a JPEG. It's shot with RAW, which is more like film. And you have the ability to like really finesse a lot of the settings when you shoot with a raw image, but it's much larger than a JPEG, which is just a flat,
Right.
you can't really change it much. So the biggest hurdle with doing this website was just taking 10 million raw images who are spread out across like, I think 25 different hard drives, and crunching them into delightful JPEGs that we have in front of us.
You could seamlessly scroll through.
Yeah. And, it gets crunched again after that. So I made the JPEGs, which are full resolution, and they have all of the looks that I wanted. One of the biggest things I wanted, as long as we're getting nerdy, is there's a feature called dehaze in Adobe. And so that really helps make the images that I shoot for this project look like the city, look like real life. It doesn't make them look like weird or crazy. I'm not doing anything tricky. I just want it to look how it really looks. So in order to keep that dehaze, I had to do everything through Lightroom. The amount of research it takes to like, is there a better way? Can we, I write code. So it's like, can I do this on the command line? Is there a way to like, what's the fastest way to humanly do this? And, after probably a few weeks of like doing all the research, I realized it was just a lot of computers.
Yeah. So you apply these effects like basically at scale to all the raw images before they're compressed down to a JPEG.
Yeah. So, we've got the raw image, we apply the look that I want, and then I create a JPEG, which is still pretty large and full resolution. It just doesn't have the malleability anymore that a raw image. When you have your raw image, you could say, I want to deal with just the shadows, and it's essentially like 3 or 4 JPEGs stacked, and all that information is like from front to back is available. And you're like, you might look at it like this picture of the World Trade Center in the lower right, and there's no detail on those buildings in the city. It's just black. It's just a silhouette. But if you got your hands on the raw image, you could essentially turn the lights on, bring the shadows all the way up, and all of a sudden you've got like a perfectly lit building. So the process that we've gone from raw image to JPEG, and now here's where it gets fun. And I met on Instagram this web developer named Matthias Tempels, and he has figured out a way to turn those JPEGs into JSON files. So now all of a sudden they're in like digestible bits that still look amazing when you're browsing, but are very, very, very small. And that's the reason that you're able to browse like lightning fast.
And are the actual parameters changing based on time of day and weather and all, or is it sort of a static filter that you want that it's going to look good through this?
Yeah, so that was the challenge, right? Because you want to go through every single image and make it look best, make it look however you want to make it look. But I needed to find a look. I decided that I wanted to find one look that would look great all the time. And so that's what I did, and I want it to look pretty good in the middle of the night. And I want it to look great during a crazy, weird sunrise and sunset, So that was the challenge. What I ended up doing was, I have 3 cameras here. So what I ended up doing was, each of those 3 cameras gets their own look.
Yeah.
So, this is going to make the World Trade Center shot look best. This is going to make the other one look best. So on and so forth. And
sorry, go ahead.
I had all this data, at a certain point when I really, really had the time to start into this was about 6 months ago. And at that point, I was literally looking at about 10 million raw images on a shelf that needed to be processed somehow. But at the same time, I was thinking, what can I do to make this happen in real time.
Mhm.
And that's where we are now. That's the great thing. So first I had to deal with sort of the debt, all that data that
You have no backlog now.
I have no backlog, and each camera has its own computer, and they're all uploading to Amazon Web Services every 15 minutes. So all that stuff that I had to do, when I was crunching through millions of images, trying to figure out what can I do to make it one more per minute, or can I, oh, wow, this computer can do 300 per minute, that kind of bargaining. All that's over because now it's happening in real time. Lightroom is just, it happens in I think about 5 seconds from the time the picture is created. It gets renamed quickly with the perfect name. And then Lightroom says, oh, wow, check, there's a new thing. so Lightroom takes it, puts one in the archive, that's the raw file that we're done with. And we'll deal with it later if we want to. And then it applies the look to the JPEG and then exports the JPEG to a folder.
And this is all automatic at the command line. You're running.
Yeah. So that part that I just described, that's stuff that I took care of.
Mhm.
And then the next part is the web developer, Matthias Tempels, he's got a separate thing that he's created, an indexer, which is just beyond brilliant. That is just keeping an eye on that one folder. And every time we get 30 pictures in there, that means 15 minutes, 30 pictures, 15 minutes, create a new thing and put it up online. So it's wild. It's wild.
So you don't need to update it. If I go to the website tomorrow, it'll be updated in real time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know you just recently retired your original MacBook Pro.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Are there any other underrated tools that you find indispensable for this job? I know you kept the hard drive companies in business in the last,
do we want to say hi?
Sure.
Is it that kind of TV show? This is the MacBook, and it expanded in a very massive way, and it can't close anymore. So this computer I plugged in, as I mentioned, this crazy project took like a year to figure out, just testing different cameras and things. So that computer was turned on for about 7 years. It just sat there, turned on. And when I conceived this project, I thought, well, you got to worry about power outages. You're shooting a time lapse. You want it to go for 30 years. What happens when the power goes out?
Right.
So the first way to combat that was it should be run by a laptop, because a laptop has 11 hours after the power goes out on the battery. And so I thought that's cool. And then I have the uninterruptible power supply battery for the camera and the hard drive. So, there you are.
And just every day you click update tomorrow, update tomorrow, update tomorrow. Find me.
Yes, about 2,500 days of clicking. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like all the settings, right, for the computer, like you're approaching that computer differently. We're turning off everything, no update. Oh my God. Because if it did update the operating system, for example, not only is it going to go offline for a certain amount of time while it does that, it also might not like the scripts that you wrote for the previous operating system. So all of the file handling and everything, I wrote that, it comes in at midnight and it moves the files into here and there, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You were asking about equipment then?
Yeah, it seems like that's pretty indispensable as your MacBook Pro.
Yeah. And so now it's been replaced by an M1 Mac Mini, which is outrageously fast. I do need to conceive a better battery backup situation though. Yeah. Recently I was home when the power went out, and it got to a point where I don't know what the right wording is, but I was just running around like a Looney Tune. Like, okay, here's a battery for you. And here, I was just like coming up with different situations to make it work. And then the power came back on. I was like, oh, thank God.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Okay, we're going to ask you some fun questions now. Okay. These are, just be honest. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Right here.
And where are you?
Oh yeah, so right here, Weehawken, New Jersey.
If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
La Sandwichery.
So good. Miami classic. Miami Beach too. If you won $10 million tomorrow, what would you spend it on?
I got lost. What would I spend $10 million on? That's a great question. I would, and this is going to sound like a totally fake answer, but I would add 1 or 2 cameras.
A true filmmaker. What would be the title of the book about you if your worst enemy wrote it?
Joe thinks everything is Mars. I've been known for misidentifying celestial bodies as Mars.
I love it. I love it. Our final round. This is not a game show, but this is our final round, which is our rapid fire questions. I'm going to give you 2 options to choose from, and you have 1 second to respond. Okay. Sony or Canon?
Sony.
Premiere or Final Cut?
Premiere.
60 frames per second or 1,000 frames per second?
No, that depends on the project.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Photoshop or Lightroom?
They're not different.
Whatever and ever.
Anyway,
whatever and ever, amen, or Rockin' the Suburbs?
Oh, whatever and ever, amen.
The Stranger or An Innocent Man?
Innocent Man.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We love what you're up to. It's just always so exciting to see these latest developments in your projects, and can't wait to see what you do next. Let's do something again soon, and we hope to have you back.
Yeah, I'd love to be back.
Yeah. Is there any final word you want to leave with us?
I'm still stuck on that failure one because I'll have a good answer in like 1 minute.
Maybe it will happen.
Then we'll be gone.
Will you tell us where people can find out about your work and how they should best reach out and find stills and find images and moving pictures of yours?
Yeah. If you want to check out some of my work, you can go to josephdigiovanna.com to see a lot of my work that I think is really special. Or if you want to check out my 30-year time-lapse project, that's at nyctimescape.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. We will talk soon. Very exciting.